Welcome back, everyone, and thank you, Casey Bailey, for those amazing poems, and to Phil for a truly thought-provoking start to the day. I am really delighted to be here with Ruth Langford, who is coming live from Tasmania. Ruth is a Yata Yata woman, founding director of Aboriginal social enterprise Niri Niara. And thank you for being with us today, Ruth. I'm going to hand straight over to you.
Thank you so very much, Holly, and it's a delight to see you again. First of all, I'd like to pay my deep respects and acknowledgement to the country that everybody is currently sitting on. So if you will take a moment to help me to connect with that place where you are by just feeling your body and realizing or imagining exactly where are you. Taking that moment to feel where you're supported and where you're connected, where's your place currently in the world. It helps me. And I'd also like to pay deep respects to this land where I am. I'm actually here joining you from Nipaluna, Hobart in Lutruwita, Tasmania, the island state of Australia, what is the nation known as Australia. And even though I'm in the city that's been covered over with concrete, I'm actually right here just under the surface is where the fresh water from our creation being a mountain travels down to meet the salt water of Timtimul-Limananya, which is our saltwater river. So right now, even though it's been covered over, just below the surface is the existing rock pools. And it's the most nutrient-rich, culturally rich, biodiverse rich place in all of the landscape. And we're very blessed here in Tasmania and Lutruwita to have a home country that is full of abundant of beautiful nature, forests, fresh water, clean water, as well as great mountain ranges as well. And we also get the very cold, brisk wind that comes up through Antarctica. Basically, if I was to point that way, there's no landmass between me and Antarctica. I'd also like to pay respects to my own lineages, my own ancestry. I'm a Yorta Yorta woman. My mother is a Yorta Yorta woman. So is all the generations before her of my matrilineal line. And the Yorta Yorta are the women are the carriers of our knowledge, and we are a matrilineal people. And my father is an Australian heritage lineage that goes also back to Europe and Britain, Scotland, Celtic heritage. I also have a mixture of connection from around the world. I'd also like to pay respects to your ancestral lineage, that which has literally formed who you are. I take a moment to hold in my heart that may the stories that I share with you today be of service first and foremost to you. May that expand to your family, but also may it expand to your ancestral lineage and to the place where you are currently being supported by. As Holly introduced me, I'm a founding director of an Aboriginal social enterprise, Niri Niara, which basically draws on ancient traditions, earth honouring practices, predominantly Indigenous First Nations knowledges, and unites it with modern innovation through creative practices and cultural sharing for the creation of good spirit. And that comes in all sorts of forms. But ultimately, my lineage and where I come from and practices, particularly raising up within an Aboriginal community, we understand that creative, culturally creative expression are natural modalities of healing, particularly around mental health and well-being. And I'd like to particularly share with you today some knowledges of my journeys as I've travelled around the world and sat with Indigenous knowledge keepers, First Nations elders, earth-based spiritual tradition teachers, as well as country itself. And for First Nations Aboriginal people here in Australia, when we talk about country, we're talking about the life force that is in all things. It is within the land, the sea, the air, all of the elemental forces. And that country, that spiritual, connective, supportive, wisdom keepers, that country is there for our guidance and protection. And that through acknowledging country, we have the opportunity to ensure that we are in right relationship with all things, particularly in right relationship, so our own mental health and well-being is supported in a way that we are clear, acting in harmony with the potential that is within all things that are surrounded us, and that we can move forward in our pathway as though we have an inner compass guiding us, because our inner compass is very much grounded in our belonging, our knowledge that we are connected and that we matter. And this basic essence of predominantly First Nations tradition all across the globe, particularly what I was reared up in, is fundamental to good health and well-being. It's also fundamental in cultivating the gifts that we have and offering those gifts to the collective. And pretty much that's what we would term leadership. In most Indigenous and earth-honouring traditional practices and ways of being, we're less about the apex of leadership and very much more about the equality, which has leadership from every single citizen, every single person is a leader in their own right because of their own diversity and their own unique gifts. And that's where it comes down when I say that this country guides us into the understanding that we matter. This way of being, these practices that we have really cultivate that it is absolutely vital to have as much diversity within a community, within a team, within a structure, within ecology, because that diversity ensures complementary ways of being, skill sets, and that understanding that my diversity matters, my uniqueness matters. And so some of the way that we cultivate, and in my life, I've been very blessed to draw on both my Yorta Yorta tradition and the Tasmanian Aboriginal community where I was born and continue to live and have rights and responsibilities in, but also the place and space and where I was connected to, as well as my Australian father lineage, which helped me understand that there is a difference between an Indigenous perspective and a colonising construct. Now, I say this to you because a part of the Indigenous ways and earth-based practice ways to ensure that we are connecting as deeply as we can within our own clarity and our own harmonious way of being It ensures that that leadership quality is enacted in every single person, that whoever is the best place for that skill set to talk about, whether or not it's a 3-year-old, whether or not it's an elder, whoever is best placed to speak and guide the collective on that, is given as much support to cultivate their gifts and then offer that in collectives. And it can be, it's not right or wrong, but it can be very different to the apex positioning that it's only the leader that knows what's best for the group. So this can often create, what can happen is that members of the group that aren't the leaders question their own capacity, their own self-worth, and whether or not they matter. And so a big part of ensuring that you first and foremost know that you are precious and that you belong and what you have to offer does matter is making sure that you're in right relationship. And so there's a couple of things that I'd like to share with you that has really deeply helped me, particularly because I had the spiritual tradition of Indigenous knowledges from my mother, but I also had the inherited complexity of disconnection from my colonizing ancestry of my Australian father. And so as I became aware of growing up that there is, for many people on the planet now, a very deep sense of overwhelm, a feeling that they're just lost in where they are, how do they draw on support, and how are they feeling this sense of, aha, life is beautiful. Particularly in a time like now where we are acutely aware of our disconnection and our isolation. And for many people, acutely aware of the question, who am I connected to? How am I supported? And so within many First Nations and Indigenous traditions, we look to a broader time, space, understanding of connection. And we also look to those things that can impart wisdom that understands a broader time-space connection. And in that, I'm talking about deep ancestral lineages, as well as the wisdom of country, the wisdom of tree, the wisdom of water, and the wisdom of rocks, as well as celestial beings, the wisdom of the sun or the moon. Most of our traditions are very much based upon the centering understanding of Earth itself as the wisdom keeper, as our mama. But we also understand our links and our connection to where we're placed within the universe. So many of us have an understanding that our ancestral connections are also from star systems as well. And that creates such a deep sense of safety and security, as well as understanding that we have places that we can go to check in with. And so this is a human birthright. Every single tradition and culture on Earth originates in practices and cultures that are Earth honoring. And so even though you may have a current experience both in your life, or maybe you've inherited over the last 3, 5, 7, maybe 13 generations, a disconnection from the knowledge that you are connected with the earth and that you do have the power to draw on your ancestral wisdom and knowledge and guidance and protection. If you are currently one of those people, you can hopefully experience and be assured that you also have a longer lineage than that. And that lineage has literally formed you, and that knowledge still resides within every single cell of your being. And so what is really important is to cultivate practices of conversation and relationship with your ancestral lineage in whatever shape or means that comes by. And I'm not talking about needing to know a particular initiatory ceremony. I'm talking about simply opening up a conversation, whether or not that's lighting a candle, so that you can reach back into your lineage to help heal anything that's gone before that you may have inherited that is causing confusion or a concept or a perception of being disconnected with greater wisdom that is around you and surrounds you consistently. The other thing that has certainly helped my health and well-being and many people that I work with is understanding that the land itself is a source of wisdom. And that's something that can be a deep source of nourishment. And often when I say, well, sometimes when I'm feeling lost or alone, I sit by a tree and I talk to a tree. And some people go, oh, trees can't talk. Yet it's usually because people haven't cultivated the capacity to understand the language. Just like nobody's born knowing how to speak several languages. We have to cultivate and learn that. It's the same as learning the language of maybe you've got a pet at home, a dog or a cat, or you learn to communicate with that animal because you're in relationship with it. You sit with it, you spend time with it, you love it, it loves you. It's the same as country itself. When you sit with this and you open to the opportunity to actually receive the wisdom, guidance, and support and nurturing, then you have the capacity to actually start to interact with these things. It's the same as your own lineage. Knowing that somewhere in your lineage that you have ancestors that are calling to you, hoping to offer their guidance and support. So these are the things that are deeply founded within First Nations understanding of health and well-being, and particularly how being very connected and making right your relationships with your own ancestral lineage, as well as making right your relationship with the place and space that you call home, that you are gifted with support as well as clarity, so that you can know wholeheartedly what your gifts are, what the genius inside that you have to offer everybody in that form of leadership, in that form that everyone matters and your voice matters, and that you can offer this unique, beautiful gift that is crucial, particularly in today's time, raising the voices of connection, belonging, and knowing very clearly that you matter and that what you have to offer matters. So I hope in some way that this very small snippets of some of these ways that we unite these ancient traditions, but with modern innovation and with a hope of understanding that this can support your own way of being, as well as the way that you move forward and support of maybe it's your family, the work that you do, and maybe it's a broader community, maybe it's the earth itself and all beings. So Narinyara, Yati Vatawa, Wulika, sending blessing to all of you. Thank you.